This video is for section 1.3. We're looking at the midpoint formula. Remember, to find the midpoint of a segment, all you need to do is average some things. We're going to average our x's by adding and then dividing by 2. And we're going to average our y's by adding and dividing by 2 as well. So your midpoint of a segment is going to be an ordered pair. You're going to end up with an x and a y. And those x's and y's come from averaging two other x's and y's. Here's some examples. Let's find the coordinates of the midpoints. This number 6, we have it worked out for you. So the midpoint here for number 6, if you follow all this stuff on the right-hand side, is -1/2. That's what that -0.5 is, -1. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing for number 7. We're going to average our x's, which I'm going to make blue, and we're going to average our y's, which I'll make yellow. We want to do 2 plus 1 divided by 2. And we want to do -5 plus 3 divided by 2. And we want to simplify there. 2 plus 1 is 3. If you want to divide that by 2, you can just leave it as a fraction. -5 plus 3 is -2. And -2 divided by +2 is -1. The midpoint for this number 7 would be at 3/2 and -1. Okay, now we're going to do number 8 the same way. I'll highlight the x's and I'll highlight the y's. We're going to add our x's and divide by 2. So 0 plus -4 is -4. Divide that by 2, you get -2. 6 plus -9 is -3. And you want to divide that by 2, so just write it like that. That's where your midpoint lives. Using the midpoint formula is as simple as averaging. Okay, so that midpoint formula allows us to find the midpoint of a segment if we know the endpoints of the segment. What if we know the coordinates of the midpoint and the coordinates of an endpoint? Could you find the coordinates of the other endpoint? Sure you can. Let's think about it for a second. So this is a hard example. M is the midpoint of segment AB. So we have point A, we just don't know where B is. Now, B is going to live somewhere way down here. We don't know where, though. Okay, we need to find it. How could we do it? Well, you want to average A with whatever B is. And you end up with the values for M. Okay? So here's one way to look at it. If you take the blue values, the x's, and average them, you should end up with 5. That's this 5. If you average the y values, that's the yellow, you should end up with that -7. Okay, so here's a couple different ways to think about it. I'm going to take that 1 and that x, those are my blue guys, divide it by 2, and I know it has to equal 5, the guy that's circled. I'm going to do the same thing with my y values. 4 plus y divided by 2. That has to equal -7. Now, these are just two algebraic equations that you can solve. Notice how you're going to multiply both sides of each of those equations by 2. So you end up with this, and you end up with that. Okay, so the first step is multiply by 2. And then the next step is, if you want to get the x or the y, you're going to subtract the other thing, which is end up going to be your endpoint. So you'd subtract an endpoint. So 10 minus 1 is 9. Negative 14 minus 4 is negative 18. Okay, so where does B live? B lives at 9, negative 18. And that makes sense. Remember when we had this guy extended, if B lives down here, that means it's 9 units right, 18 units down. I'll erase that because that looks kind of messy. But it was a good visual. You got the idea. Okay. Now, number 10 is the same exact problem. Let's do number 10 the same way, except this time it's multiple choice. If it helps you, do this instead because this is way quicker. Take your midpoint and multiply it by 2. So for example, I'm going to take that 8 and multiply it by 2 and get 16. Then I'm going to take that 16 and subtract 18 from it. 16 minus 18 is negative 2. Take the negative 9 times 2, and you get negative 18. Negative 18 minus a negative 21. I'm writing that out, notice. That's like negative 18 plus 21. That gives you a positive 3. See how easy that was? Okay, one more problem here. In this figure, point C is the midpoint of segment AB. We want to find X. We want to find the distance from A to C, the distance from C to B, and then the distance from A to B. That's all 3 segment lengths. If C is the midpoint, you know this. Segment AC is congruent to segment CB. We know segment AC's length is 2x. We know that segment CB's length is 5x minus 6. I wanted to put a CB there. So you plug those in. Solve for x. X is 2. Now if x is 2, that means when you plug in, 2 times 2 is 4. Likewise over here, you got 5 times that 2 minus 6. That should also give you 4. Now you should know right now if you're right or wrong. Notice how both lengths are the same. A to C is 4. C to B is 4. How far is it from A to B? That'd be the whole thing. That would be 8. Try this next one on your own.